Hi everyone, I'm Sean Cadebs along with my amazingly talented co-anchor Tao Yuan. We are beginning our day 2 of our new China adventure. We're driving through the city of Guizhou right now. It is a city, according to the latest statistics I saw, of about 5 million people. And here in this province of Guizhou, it had always been one suffering economically, kind of looking perhaps a bit envious at the other areas around, especially the powerhouse to the southeast, and the long-term economic benefit that the northeast has always brought. There you see a little cloudy skies here, but we're not going to let that rain on our parade today. We have a lot to tell you about. We're really going to focus on the economic improvements that this province has had, and a lot of that has been because of the improved infrastructure. Better roads, better bridges that actually broach the mountaintops, make it a lot easier to travel. They've been able to harness hydropower from the rivers, but perhaps the most amazing thing is the fact that they have built so many high-speed rails that right now high-tech industry is looking at this, sort of licking their chops, that this is going to be an exciting place to invest. We're talking about companies like Alibaba, Tencent, moving forward, Huawei,
Amazon, Apple, huge tech giants like those ones. So one thing that you need to know about the province of Guizhou is that probably a lot of people outside of China may have never heard of it before because it's just tucked away in remote mountainous region in southwest China. It's one of the poorest provinces in the country, as you mentioned before. One of the lowest GDP per capita provinces. It's one of the most ethnically diverse provinces too, so a lot of the ethnic minorities here, they have their own language, their own writing system, so they don't speak Mandarin Chinese. That's also another reason why this province is so poor. But things are picking up in this province, as you said before. It's also one of the fastest growing ones, and you wouldn't imagine that tech giants like Alibaba, like Amazon, like Apple, they would want to set up their data center. I think Apple set up their first data center in Asia, right in this province.
Right. And we understand what's going on right now, but to bring you in and let you understand how we got to this point in China, we're joined by a couple of our guests, Victor Gao and Chen Jiahe.
Yes.
Thanks very much for joining us. I'll start with you, Mr. Chen, if I can. We were talking earlier about how much this area has changed. What do you think the number one reason that economic breath is being blown into this region, that this city we're in right now is growing so rapidly and so many hundreds of thousands of people are being lifted out of poverty?
Well, people might say that in the development economics, you have a low development level, then you have high potentials, and you are supposed to have high growth rate. This is one important condition, but if you look all over the world, it's not every poor region is enjoying high growth rate. I mean, like many African countries, Latin American countries, they're trapped in the poverty. So what is going on in Guizhou is that it's actually located in China. China is like, we are a united nation. The central government is bringing all the money, taxes collected from provinces like Shanghai or Guangdong to the poor regions and help them develop what they should develop, like the big data here. Because Guizhou doesn't have a lot of ocean coast or big rivers that can bring its transportation to the other provinces. So the central government is doing all this. It's like a central government subsidy and the planning to help this region. This, I think, is the most critical thing. If it's an isolated country, it won't be able to develop like this one, I think.
But Victor, I think the latest number is that the growth rate in this province last year was about 9.1%. That's a lot higher than the national average. But Jiahe talked about how this province is picking up from a low start. Do you think it's going to be able to maintain this kind of growth?
I believe so. I think Guizhou Province is probably one of the biggest beneficiary and winner of this round of China's modernization, characterized by a very advanced manufacturing, very high-end infrastructure, including high-speed railway and high-speed expressway, for example, and also a massive amount of rollout of airports. And as a result, Guizhou City, Guizhou Province, which used to be very fragmented and separated by mountains and valleys, for example, now all of a sudden, because of the new way of building highways and railways, Guizhou is very much connected. It is not only connected within Guizhou City province itself, but also connected with the surrounding provinces and municipalities. And I learned by today, Guizhou already has finished 9 lines of express railway, and it's connected with major cities like Kunming, Chengdu, Chongqing, Wuhan, Changsha, Guangzhou,
All
you
the
name
major
it,
ones in the
all the
region.
major ones. So they now take great pride of reaching, let's say, Shanghai or Beijing within certain hours. And therefore, Guizhou, in our collective psyche, we always thought Guizhou was a far remote place, very difficult to access. But now it's well plugged, and Guizhou has become a hub in the national high-speed railway. I think this will probably generate years, if not decades, of high growth for Guizhou. And Guizhou is also big enough. It has a land area of 176,000 square kilometers, almost half the size of Japan, for example. So you can see that this province, in the right place at the right time, capturing the wave of the new modernization in China, it will happen.
Right place at the right time, and that's kind of where we are as well. Once again, we're on our new China adventure. CGTN is sending 3 crews crisscrossing this vast nation. We are in the southwest, obviously. We have a crew in the economic powerhouse going through the southeast, talking about all the benefits there, and of course the northeast. We heard from them yesterday, all the trade that's going on with border nations.
In this part of China, it's very much in the center of the southwestern part of China. And also, because of its cheap power, because of the hydro resources in the province, many companies, both Chinese companies as well as international companies, are really moving in to build data center, clouds, for example. So it probably will really leapfrog forward to capture this next wave of modernization.
Well, gentlemen, we're going to take a break from here right now, and we'll talk with you just a bit more about all the benefits this area is enjoying. But right now, we're going to go to our friends in the northeast.
Actually, Sean, we can't do that just yet because I just got told that there are some technical problems, so we need to go on. But
the benefit of speaking Chinese, because I had no idea.
But I think it's just because what we're talking about is so interesting that they want to hear more from us, right?
Exactly.
So I think it's important to bring up China's this whole poverty alleviation campaign right now, because Guizhou Province, like we said, it's poor. So it's on the forefront of that huge, ambitious drive to completely eradicate poverty by the year of 2020. So, Jiahe, what do you think are some of the challenges here for Guizhou Province? Because I'm looking at the feed right now, and I think our audience are seeing the same thing, right? Beautiful cities, skyscrapers, beautiful streets, but it's not everywhere in Guizhou looks like this. If we go outside of the capital city, Guiyang, and if we actually go into the villages, it's a completely different storyline. I mean, poverty, small-scale family agriculture. Do you think it's possible to completely?
So Guizhou is approximately the same thing. If you go to 1920 or 1930 in Japan, it's many places filled with poverty, especially within the mountains. But later on, 2 things really changed Japan, and I think that will change Guizhou as well in the future. The first is urbanization. You can't really have so many people in the mountains and keep them rich because of the transportation is difficult over that. So it's actually happening in China. Currently, the urbanization rate in China is over 50%. It's lower in provinces like Guizhou or Yunnan. It's much higher in Shanghai and Beijing, but the numbers are increasing every day. So actually, more people will live in cities, and as long as we have urbanized the cities, that's great enough. The second is that the mountain place will transfer the economy from like agriculture to like tourism economy. That will bring advantage to their economy. They can't keep on doing agriculture every day on everyone. So these things will change Guizhou in the future.
And one other thing, I had recently the pleasure of going to Tibet, and that is an area obviously where the native language wasn't Mandarin. But one thing I noticed that the Chinese government is doing in terms of trying to bring once nomadic people to a city where they want to live, to have running water, electricity and such, is they're also embracing the culture and the fact that this area is so ethnically diverse, this wonderful mosaic that really makes up China's history. Talk a bit about that in the Southwest and how you think, obviously, that characterized the past in this nation and how it will not be forgotten in the future.
Well, I understand Guizhou Province is one of the most ethnically diversified provinces in China. It has all the 56 ethnic groups in China. And it also has many indigenous ethnic groups who have been living in this part of China for centuries, for example. And ever since 1949, I think the Chinese government has really done a good job in, for example, helping these ethnic groups to maintain their own very special and unique cultures. In some cases, also helping them to introduce their written languages. Many of these ethnic groups originally only had oral languages. And I think also how to make sure that while they need to learn the Mandarin in order to better perform in the modernized world, but also how they can really keep their ethnic identities. This is a challenge, and I think the more they can protect their ethnic culture and heritage, the better. China will be richer as a result of that. Yes.
Right. Like Sean just said before, we actually have 3 teams of journalists crisscrossing the country, taking to different parts of the country. So I think right now we can go to our colleagues, Jeff Moody and Cui Hui Ao in the Northeast. Hey guys, can you hear us?
Well, we got up very, very early this morning. We were on the bus at 6:30, but it's been worth it. Look where we are. We're in the grasslands of Hulunbuir. It's beautiful. The air is beautiful. And I have to just tell you that a bit earlier on, did a bit of horse riding, me and Huiao.
He was really good.
Poor old Huiao got a bit scared
So frightened.
and had to get off the horse.
But you seemed to really enjoy yourself on the horse.
Well, I did until
Had a
I had to
connection.
get off, because then I ripped my shirt. And I ripped my whole shirt open and I had to get changed. So it wasn't the greatest success, but we are going to get back on a horse in a couple of hours.
You are, not me.
You're going to get on too.
But welcome to New China. It's our special series to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the founding of PRC, People's Republic of China. Today it's our day 2. We are in Hulunbuir, which the city itself is only 23 miles away from the border with Russia. But we are, of course, on the grassland.
We're not in the city.
We are not in the city. With all the cows and sheep and camels, right?
Camels.
And our background. And the grassland is one of the most grasslands in the world, and it has a natural grassland coverage of over 80%. It covers an entire area of around 100,000 square kilometers.
And 127 different types of grass, apparently. That's amazing. And the air is so
fresh.
Pure and fresh.
Pure
isn't
and
it?
fresh. So it's like
lovely.
a beautiful picture stroke. I don't know if our cameraman can give a shot to the entire setting, but remember, Hulunbuir is not just about grass and animals, but also crisscross rivers and lakes. Apparently 300 lakes dotted around this area. So it makes it a very beautiful scene.
I think we should stay here all day, because apparently they're promising us a roast lamb for lunch.
Yes, I'm very
Which
much
does
looking
sound
forward
lovely.
to that. But as for now, let's cross over to our reporter, Feng Yilei, who's with Tengen and Lyon.
Today we arrived at the Grand Prairie of Hulunbuir, which is one of the top grasslands in the world. And right now we're literally in the midst of the grassland on the shipyard of a Mongolia family. And with me is Wu Ren Gaowa, who is the lady of the house of this Mongolian family. And also we have Elna Chang, our expert, and also Li Yong. So
Not expert.
yeah, our guest, yeah, who will give us some of the insights on the grassland protection and other topics that you might be interested in. So first of all, how long have you been living here in the grassland? 就是您在这个草原上住了多长时间了？现在生活怎么样？
生活非常好，就我们在这生活19年，19年结婚以来就是在这个地方，放牧。我爱人是牧民，有个姑娘，现在姑娘已经是18周岁了，在国外上课呢。
So Urengawa has been living here for 19 years. That's nearly 2 decades. And her husband is still a herdsman today. And they have a daughter, which is who's 18 years old and now living in Canada. But she has been living here since she got married. So how do you feel right now? Because yeah, it's really a jade land and it's so gorgeous. And now we have flawed.
Look at this skyline. This is absolutely incredible. How you know, this is natural heritage. This is something that China and Inner Mongolia, really treasured. And the grasslands, as we were talking about, are really something very special. You have over 127 different types of grasses here. You have all sorts of animals and things like that depend on this. Herding has been the main source of income in this area. So although we see this beauty, we had a long conversation with this flower of the prairie, and we talked about how life is and how much has changed in the last 70 years. I mean, you talked extensively about this with her.
Yes, she told me that life has changed a great deal as compared with the lives of her grandparents. Because right now they use modern equipment like motorcycles to drive the animals, and they have electricity supplied to each of their facilities. And they feel very happy. And I also asked about their income, and income has increased substantially because of the government policy support and because of the improvement of the environment. Normally, they would be on the horseback, migrating to different places where they have enough grass to graze on.
And that's the amazing change. In 70 years, you've gone from a situation where literally they were living as herdspeople and not doing anything. I mean, not staying in one place. And now you have buildings, you have corrals. Off there in the very back, you'll see where they keep all the animals during the wintertime. And it's not enclosed. The animals are so hardy, so strong, that they can actually weather the winter. Minus 40 is what you were telling me. That's incredible. I don't want to be out here at minus 40. But they're herdsmen who stay here through this. This is a way of life. And,
exactly.
It's amazing.
And most important of all, they enjoy the life here. And they also enjoy the result of their work, on this grassland. So they love this place. But at the same time, they enjoy the life also that they have their own homes, in the downtown area. So they have choices all at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah.
But so let's talk a little bit about the prairie. I mean, this prairie is an ecological wonderland. I mean, literally, there's only so many places like this that are left. So when we started talking about it in the United States, where I'm from, we have prairie areas, and they are now treasured. Before, it was just farmers said, I just want to dig it up and plant something and make money. But we soon realized that you do that, you end this kind of connection with a very valuable. Hulunbuir has not only these grasslands, but also wetlands. And they're able to keep a lot of migrating birds there and things like that. They come up here in the summer and then they fly south for the winter. These are the kinds of things that in the future, when you want to take your children somewhere, you want them to experience what life was like. These are the kind of ecological treasures. And I think there'll be a lot of ecological tourism here going forward.
As a matter of fact, I asked her, for example, what is the position in terms of protecting land? She told me, government, strongly, support any action, to protect the grassland. There are ongoing effort, like converting, farmland into, grassland.
Back into prairie, yeah.
Yes, and they put a lot of priority on the ecological conditions here.
But also the old coal mines. What they do is they're requiring them to be covered up again, and they plant on top of them. So instead of being these horrible, nasty scars on the landscape, they fold back into the natural environment. But this is not only helping China.
Right.
All of the techniques that China has adopted here are now being used in Africa and other places in order to drive back the desert from taking over areas like this, keeping things. Now, we were talking a little bit about this, and just how important it is. I mean, in Beijing, you remember dust storms. I mean, even in 1999, there would be days and sometimes weeks where you could basically, it was hard to even go out. It was the city would turn basically red, brown, gray. And now, so rarely, I think one time in the last 3 or 4 years, we've actually seen that.
the good thing is we can already see some of the obvious achievements the local government has made. For example, the open pit mining you talk about. As far as I know, they already shut down like most of them by 2004. Even though they are still developing the coal mining industry here, because Inner Mongolia is right now the largest producer among all the provinces in China, but they are doing it like in a more standard way.
And it's very important. I mean, we were talking about the coal things. You know, there was a real effort to make sure that the smaller, maybe not legal coal mines were in fact shut down. And that the coal mining, as you said, because it can be dangerous. There's a lot of equipment. You have to have safety. And as a result of that, they've actually increased the amount of coal they can get.
As a matter of fact, those existing coal mines, they are adopting measures. I mean protection measures. For example, when they dig the pit, they will use that dirt
later on to fill
to fill the other ones, and they also use fences, in order to prevent the spread of dust. So the effort has been made to prevent that, and at the same time, many of the pits have been closed and refilled, and vegetation on it has been restored. So this is really reflect the government's, their, for example, their idea, put ecological first, and then they are trying to promote the so-called green development. And actually, what we see is evidence of the government effort to maintain the vegetation on the land.
This is also serious. I hear that in December, they have some fun here.
Yes, so there will be some entertainment activities, including the very famous Nadam Festival in the summertime, and also they have another Nadam Festival in winter, in mid-December. So that will allow them to have some fun, even in the very extremely freezing weather.
It sounds like it might be fun for other people to come and experience a winter Nadam, because we always see the pictures of the summer one. So wrestling and horse racing and all of the things that they do.
Right now, I think we can also take a look at the changes for a Mongolia herdsman's family.
Well, you can see the buildings and the here.
So the lady will take us she will show us around and on her farm. So earlier she told me she wasn't influenced a lot by the things like mining, but she also witnessed a huge change in the improvement of the quality of the pastures here in this area. And that has greatly changed her, improved the quality of life and how they their produce.
I'd love to know this technical thing, but are they changing the mixture of grasses, adding things in that kind of help with nitrogen fixation? That's returning the things that you need into the soil to make it richer and make the grasses grow better, or are they just letting things go natural?
他说：“您这边他有一个比较专业的，就是关于这个生产的一个问题，就是您这边在恢复这个草地上有没有，就是说给这个草的一些这个数量呀，包括它这个怎么样恢复这个土地的一些这个营养呀，这些做一些这样的工作。
我们这方面为主。
但就是再一个就是你们在这个维持这个草场的时候啊，草的品种你们做不做调整？
对，就是品种。
另外一个呢，就是你们会不会做一些施肥啊？比方说氮肥啊。” 这个会使草更茂盛一点，这些你们做不做？还是就是完全天然？
完全天然。
完全 completely natural. You don't really do anything.
All natural, 100%.
Oh yes.
But the authority is actually doing something to improve, as you say, the diversity of pasture with some of the academic institutes and companies. What they call is a grass industry.
But this really shows, where the government can be very helpful. I mean, without, educational institutions studying this, without a real effort to protect this area, this would be lost. And it would be, what a shame to lose all of this just because no one was thinking ahead. And this is really where the government comes in.
Right.
Before herdsmen who have been living here for hundreds of years, they have their own tradition to keep the grass in a good condition. For example, they all follow what they call a rotational grazing. So each season they will move to a different place to give time for the grassland to recover.
You see, this is an open university. We are learning so much through our friend here about everything that they're doing to protect this natural heritage. Really wonderful.
我们从您这儿学了很多东西。
And also, I assume your living condition and also facilities like the power generator have also improved. So, can you give us some examples about that? 就是您这个现在生活的一些这个居住的条件呀，包括一些这个供电呀，就一些其他的这个基本的保障，是不是有一些变化？这个能给我们介绍一下？
现在已经是长电了，上面有直接就给我们拉的那个长电，非常方便了。
然后住宿上，
住宿也都自己盖一个
用水呀这些上面有没有？
水也都自己有那个上面有那个
井
井上面就是给打了。 有那个政策，
就是政府帮着打。
项目。
And with governmental help, now they have electricity, and also they can dig a well to get
water.
This modernization, you still need a clothesline. It's so pleasant out here to be standing. I mean, there's a slight wind, there's a few flies and things like that, but oh, what incredible air, scenery, and of course the people.
Yeah, I think the government has done a lot to help the the herdsmen here in terms of providing necessary facilities. For example, the well, they use what is called the machine well. And that is more efficient than traditional well, and that these will will give them sufficient ability, to handle whatever the production activities on this grassland.
Water is a huge issue in these areas,
yeah.
And you cannot keep livestock unless you can, unless they can drink.
Yes, and in the past, they migrate, every season, but and right now they only migrate to another location for a couple of months, and then they will come back on this piece of grassland to raise those those animals here.
Talking about going back, here we are at a traditional yurt, and they still use it for cooking.
One thing I noticed is it's probably not temporary because it's built up upon cement. Yeah, right?
Yes, one of the houses is actually mobile. They would drag the houses to another location when they migrate to another place. So they are very well equipped, mechanically equipped to move to other places, efficiently.
But what's amazing is that we said minus 40 degrees, wind howling in the middle of the winter, but inside your yurt, you're nice and warm.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So their heart is warm. And they have really, the kind of optimism for their future. And I think, this is really one of the greatest changes.
This is a testament, exactly as you're saying, to 70 years of progress.
Exactly.
And it's something that people should really experience, coming out here and seeing what has been saved and what has been done. And give them a greater sense of why and how China is developing.
Yes, and how China, put a lot of focus on the conservation of the nature. They make a lot of effort to make this grassland.
But I want to keep evidence, but China is not trying to keep it in. Donald Trump wants to build walls. All right? Actually, China is taking the technology, everything they learned, the different grasses and things like that, and they're trying to help other countries battle this. Right. And I think this is so important. When China is not rich on a per-person basis, but what they do have, they're willing to share.
Exactly.
And this is so important. If you want to have a better world, you have to be prepared to do something about it.
Right.
And you can't just put up walls and say, it's not my business or me first.
Yeah.
That is the exact opposite of where you want to be as a country, as a person.
Right.
And I think this is something
Okay, thank you guys for your inspiring opinions. So I think we will finally take a look inside the yurt.
Okay.
Yeah,
and also ask the lady for her expectation for the future of not just the country, but her life and her family's 就是您对就是现在未来的这个生活有什么样的一个期待？就包括现在就是您的这个生活上有哪些就是说是未来就是可能会主要考虑要做的，就是想要改善的一些事情。
改善就是把这个生畜牛羊啊改良好，把品种改良。改好，
我们可以进去吗？
可以的，可以的。
对
我们传
传
统的蒙包。
This is a traditional yurt.
So she said, in the near future, what they are going to do is to further improve the quality of
This
their
is the
livestock.
kang. So,
And this is
people
a
are-
traditional yurt of a Mongolia family.
Yeah. Well, but this is a cement kang, so you put the things in to keep warm.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
coal or whatever.
Yeah, and in the old days, I don't think they had a concrete floor. No.
But today this is different.
Yeah, it's different. But it's amazing that it's very nice inside here. It's very temperate. You're sheltered from the sun,
Yes.
but yet in the wintertime, it's toasty warm. Isn't that amazing?
And also now
they have their own homes in the
No,
downtown
but I'm
area,
saying
yeah.
that in the old days, they
Oh,
used this
in the old
place.
days, right.
Yeah.
So they
I
have a
think
lot
the
of other
reason
choices.
that they choose to still live on the grassland instead of move to the downtown for whole year is because they still have the love for this grassland.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
No, really.
Okay, so
Our best wishes to you.
Yes, truly an honor meeting you. 非常高兴，谢谢。
辛苦你们了。
Thank you.
谢谢。
okay, thank you. Back to our anchors.
Save that thought
Save that thought.
in case they come back to you.
Okay, save that thought. Oh. Okay, countdown. Well, thank you, Feng Yilei, for that wonderful report and that warm discussion with our guests, Anna Tingen and Li Yong. But we would just want to preview for our 12 o'clock show for Global Watch. We're going to talk about how this place, how the Hulunbuir grasslands has gotten to be as pretty as it is now, because it has gone through a period of desertification and how the hundreds of thousands of square kilometers of grassland has been restored. But Jeff, do you know where did we come this name? How do we come this name Hulunbuir?
Hulunbuir.
For the grassland.
I do. Yeah, there were two Mongolian, a boy and a girl, Mongolian boy and a girl, years and years ago. The girl was called Hulan and the boy was called Bear. They were fighting a demon. And in order to defeat the demon, the girl turned herself into a lake, as you do, to drown the demon. And once the demon was drowned and the girl was turned into a lake, poor old Bear had lost his girlfriend, so he jumped into the lake and committed suicide.
Oh my God.
It's one of these love stories that ended so unhappily, a bit like Romeo and Juliet. But
What a tragedy.
it's given us this wonderful name, Hulunbuir, and what a great place.
I think that's it for now for our grassland coverage for our live stream. This is a new China series. And now let's go to our team on the southwest route. Sean Caleb's in Taoyuan. Tell us what you've got over there.
Hello, it's us again. So, a reminder, we're doing this new China special coverage to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, and our three teams of reporters from CGTN were just on the move across the country to take you to different cities, towns, and villages to bring you the real China. Right now, Sean and I, again, we're driving across this beautiful city called Guiyang. If you look outside, a lot of things are under construction. So like we talked about before, this is one of China's fastest growing places. But Guizhou Province is also tucked away in remote mountainous China, and traditionally this is one of the poorest regions in the country. So let me bring in again our two brilliant guests, Mr. Victor Gao Zhikai and Mr. Chen Jiahe. So just to pick up from where we left off last time, we're talking about poverty alleviation in this province. And a huge part of that drive is poverty alleviation through education. But we talked about how this place is really ethnically diverse. We talked about how some of the remote villages are very poor. How do you think this province can attract teachers to come here? Because traditionally, not many people would want to spend longer periods of time here too.
I think Guizhou Province has one advantage, that is leapfrogging through many stages which they were actually left behind by national standard. Therefore, for example, when Guizhou is really going very big into the next generation of internet, for example, clouds, internet storage, data centers, etc., Guizhou may actually develop a lot of, let's say, distant learning, for example. And therefore, even though in remote mountainous areas, villages actually can pull together and really can get plugged in to distance learning, not only from other cities in Guizhou province, but also nationally, linking them up directly with major teaching centers in Beijing or Shanghai. And I think that's the way to go, especially when China is really pushing very much for 5G connectivity, and Guizhou will be, I think, in the leading front in doing that.
Mr. Chen, as we go through our new China adventure, I need to talk about a problem that is not too new right now, and that is the ongoing trade war between the United States and China. Why do you think this area has been able to sort of buck the trend? Most other areas in the United States, farmers there, manufacturers there, and here in a lot of areas in China, they've been adversely affected. The import-exports have been down, but the economic picture here has been ticking upward. Why is that?
That's one thing, is because Guizhou is having a lot of trade not only with the United States, it's also trading with a lot of ASEAN countries, a lot of Middle Asian
ASEAN
countries.
being, let's just be clear to our audience, ASEAN being the Association for Southeast Asian nations.
Yes, Southeast
so
Asian
our
countries.
neighbors to the southwest.
Our neighbors
right?
in the southeast, on the west as well, like Middle Asian countries. So all these are not actually affected because of the trade war. Another thing is that if you look at what the United States is actually blocking China, is high-tech things like Huawei, these kind of companies, Huawei, Zhongxin, this kind of companies. Guizhou is actually, apparently, is building the big data, but that's on the schedule. So apparently, Guizhou is not really involved in the trade war with the United States as well. I mean, it's mostly exporting a lot of agricultural products, these kind of things. Another very important thing is that Guizhou, we can, as we've been talking about, is one of the poorest provinces in China. So it's actually not, it's actually got a huge economic growth potential. I mean, trade is just a part of the economy. Economy contains many things. Internal growth is also very important. Guizhou has got a very robust internal growth. All these, I think, can explain your question.
Right. And Mr. Gao, we talked about this whole urbanization process, and that's also part of the poverty alleviation process as well. So China, I think, is also trying to bring a lot of the farmers in remote areas into the cities as part of the poverty alleviation through relocation drive. What are some of the problems with that?
Well, I think ever since the rural reform, which started in 1978, 1979, Chinese agriculture has been dominated, with few exceptions, of course, with small-scale family farming.
Right.
And as a result, in provinces, especially like Guizhou, scale of economy is very, very small. And in mountainous areas in this province, for example, you have very small family farming, which eventually will turn out to be very inefficient. So something needs to be done in Guizhou in particular, but also nationally in China, to consolidate the scale of farming very aggressively so that efficiency and productivity can be enhanced, especially if you compare with Chinese farming, which is fragmented and low efficient, compared with very large scale farming in the United States. On the other hand, I think, generally speaking, even though urbanization rate has already achieved more than 60% in China as a whole, there are still millions of farmers or rural residents. So when we aggressively develop larger scale economic farming, for example, we still need to figure out a way how these surplus labor in the countryside can be well taken care of.
We can't leave them behind.
We cannot leave them behind.
Half of the population in China are still farmers, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Rural population, as we call it.
Yes, in rural, live in rural China.
And Mr. Chen, from driving around this from driving around this
Larger
area, as
city,
me,
yes.
an outsider, driving from Zunyi to here,
Yes.
I just was amazed, jaw dropped, looked at the terrain.
Right.
My colleague here, Taoyuan, lives near this area, so she's seen it before. But I think it's interesting to have these two different perspectives looking at this community. What do you think of when you look out the window? There, traffic jams are a sign of economic progress,
Right.
and there's a lot of cranes in the sky as well with all the new construction going on. Is this the new China?
Yeah, I think this is called the new China. I mean, I tell you a joke. I was in Dali since 2005, and I was working in Beijing as well. So I had the chance to look at how these different parts of China was growing. So previously we had a joke in 2015, after 10 years I have been to Dali. We said, okay, previously if you sit here for 10 minutes, you see one car passing the road. Now if you sit here for 1 minute, you see 10 cars passing the road. So I think the joke is pretty good. It shows you how quick Dali has been developing. So I went back to Beijing. I met a friend of mine. I said the joke. The friend said, what's a surprise? If I'm sitting in Beijing, I stay here for 10 minutes, this car is still there. So that's the traffic jam you see all around the country. And you see Dali is having traffic jam as well nowadays. I mean, later on we're going to Dali. You can enjoy the traffic jam over there. So it's actually all developing, all the sky, these tall buildings, all the traffic jam, these kind of things. Yeah, it's all coming. I mean, it's a part of the urbanization China is actually doing. As we just said, it's about 50% of the people still living in rural areas. I think ultimately that may be reduced to like 20 or 25%, which means another 3 or 4 billion, 0.3 or 0.4 billion people are actually coming to the city.
Right. So Dali city, which you just mentioned, it's your second hometown, right?
Yeah, it's like my second hometown. My parents migrated to there about 12 years ago.
Okay, okay. That was a long time ago. I was really looking forward to go there again because last time I went there was like 8 years ago and everything was under construction.
Yeah.
It's a major tourist hub and I didn't really get to enjoy the city because everything was under construction. It was dirt and sand all over the place. So I'm really looking forward. It's also located in Yunnan Province, one of the southwest provinces in China and also one of the most beautiful provinces in China. So really looking forward to going there. I think it's 2 days later.
Yeah, to me, this is all a blank canvas. You know, every time we go into an area, but you know, we read about all the efforts going on. President Xi's effort to lift the entire country out of poverty. The latest figures I saw showed here in this province about 1.5 million people still living below the poverty line. They hope to raise 1.1 million out this year. How difficult, Mr. Gao, is it going to be to achieve this very ambitious goal?
I think the government's goal is to completely eliminate poverty as a phenomenon by next year, and
2020.
lifting all the people out of poverty by next year. However, please keep in mind that poverty is actually a moving target, and it also depends on how you classify that. Therefore, I think we should have no complacency at all. I think given the size of the Chinese population, 1.4 billion altogether, dealing with poverty, fighting against poverty, and making sure that people can move on in their living standards is a constant struggle. And I think, as Deng Xiaoping mentioned about 40 years ago, development is the hard truth. Really, we cannot find any other path but to develop. And in order to develop, we need to have good relations with the United States, with ASEAN countries, as you mentioned, with European countries, literally with all the countries in the world. And that will also dictate that China should be a nation caring for peace rather than aggression, for example. And I want to make sure that we get this message across to the rest of the world, that look at Guizhou, look at how this province has developed itself in recent years, and look at its great potential, and look at how much of a daunting task that the Chinese nation is still faced with in terms of development, in terms of lifting people living standards on a constant basis.
We're almost out of time, but just one follow-up question to you, Mr. Gao, before we hand over to our colleagues in the southeast. You talked about how poverty, the standard of poverty is all relative. And I think the standard that China is using right now, the goal by the end of 2020 right now is that nobody should live with under $1 a day. Is that the standard? About 3,000 Chinese yuan a year, right? So that's approximately less than $1 a day. But that's a really low threshold. That's a low standard.
That's the kind of poverty people in the U.S. could not even fathom.
They would not even fathom that. People outside of China in the West, they wouldn't fathom this. That's a low standard. Where do we go after 2020? I mean, the journey's not over.
I think urbanization will be a mega trend. Modernization will be a mega trend, and also China's push into the new next generation of internet, TMT, for example, high-end manufacturing, for example, all this will help China generate higher value added for the industrial productions in general. And I think in this process, China will need more and more skilled worker.
Right.
And this will give a stimulus to many living in the rural areas to migrate to not necessarily major cities, but to manufacturing centers, which may be scattered around. For example, as we see more and more in Guizhou City.
Right. So
Knowledge economy.
Right. The keys moving forward, because the next time we chat, I'd like to talk about the fact that families had been kind of split up, leaving rural areas. The parents would go work, and the children would be raised by grandchildren. But that's changing. We'll talk about that later on. But just kind of tuck that one away and think of some pithy thoughts for us as we move forward.
So should we now go to our lovely colleagues Michelle and Jianhua
in the southeast.
Hello guys, this is the second day of the 12-day New China series celebrating the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. We are en route from Nanning to Guilin. We've been up from 6 o'clock this morning, been driving for about 4 hours, and it will take probably another 2 hours before we get to Guilin, but it's been a pretty smooth ride, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's early morning, I'm afraid, right? And now we are going to one of the most beautiful places in the world. And of course, we're going to visit Lijiang River, which is considered to be one of the 15 rivers that have been considered to be the most beautiful by CNN.
Wow.
Wow. So definitely, if you are interested in the beautiful landscape here, stay tuned.
See the highway, it's been
highway right now.
It's been really a
Weather
good
is fine.
ride.
Yeah.
For us who gets car sick very often, I feel pretty okay.
I feel fine. I didn't feel car sick at all.
Yeah.
Of course, we have our friends here once again. So
Yes.
Andy Mok, Senior Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization.
And Han Hua, she's the president of Beijing Belt and Road Cooperative Community. Welcome again. How do you feel today?
Well, the journey is surprisingly long for me. It's about 5 or 6 hours from Nanning, the capital of Guangxi, to Guilin, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, as Jianhua put it. But it's not boring at all because we have seen, a lot of different landscapes. So many green, the grasslands. So we can't help comparing that to some of the places or countries we've been to, like some landscapes in Europe or in America. But this is China. This is new China. Such a huge China, in my impression.
It's very green. A lot of places are very similar to North America and Europe. Actually, a lot of greenery. I feel like
It's
untouched.
green, right?
Very
Untouched.
original.
Yeah, it's totally original. So Andy, how do you feel right now?
No, I agree. I mean, I think this has been a very pleasant trip. I mean, the scenery is beautiful, of course, but such stimulating company. So, I mean, we've had, the chance to talk about.
We keep talking. Yeah. Carry on.
Well, yes, but a couple things. I mean, when I look at what we can see from the highways, that they're really world class. So, I've driven in the U.S., in Germany, on the Autobahn, and these roads, these highways really compare very favorably. Coming to this part of the country in the south, it's so much more green. And the green, to me, is like the florets or, the tops of fresh broccoli, right? It's just such a deep, rich green that is different from the green that we see in the north of China.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned highway and everything is so interconnected. Now we have some of the footage outside our coach. It's so beautiful. A little bit cloudy today, right? But it is not as hot as
still
yesterday.
humid though.
Yeah, a little bit humid. You are still complaining about the humidity.
Not good.
Yeah, by the time you are used to it, you're out of it.
We'll see. Yeah.
Take it as
How long
a
it
different
takes.
feeling
But
from Beijing.
yeah, the green is different because at this time of the year, I think up north is kind of green, but it's turning brown slightly already.
Yeah,
It's
leaves
starting
starting to fall.
starting to fall and starting to turn colors, but now it's just lush
Yeah, it's a
green,
lush.
subtropical.
Yeah, now you can
There's
see
our
our
bus.
photo of there, the CGTN, China Global Television Network. We are crossing the country three routes.
And as Andy put it, the infrastructure work is amazing. The high speed is just the same as we experienced in Beijing or in other places. And what I want to add is the infrastructure in terms of the connectivity. Like, we're doing all the day live broadcast from a bus here and all the way back to Beijing. And we're also connecting our colleagues from the southwest lines and northeast lines. So, the signals are super,
been pretty
right?
good.
Yeah, we don't experience many, interruptions.
Yeah, no,
and
not a lot of
connecting
technical
the 4G
difficulties.
infrastructure,
Yeah.
it's super. It seems the country is ready, super ready for the 5G upgrade in the
5G
next
is coming
couple
pretty
of months.
soon.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Like 2020, right?
Well, I know for a lot of Tier 1 cities, it's already being rolled out. At least that's the plan. And even in Xiong'an, the new city,
the pilot
that
city,
there's going to be 5G as well. But one thing I want to share too is that, I'm very excited about going to Guilin, even though I've been there before. Because, when we think about, or, as James Thurber, the American humorist, called T.C. Nitz, the celebrated man in the streets, or the woman in the streets, or the average person outside of China, we think has three images of China, right? So one is, of course, the Great Wall. The second, terracotta warriors in Xi'an. And last, Guilin. Yes, I think we're going to one of the most iconic and most famous places that are associated with China.
It's also the most exciting, the one that I most look forward to as well.
Yeah, and Guilin, literally it means the forest of osmanthus, because that city is full of the plants over there, right? It was established a little bit of the history there, because I've been there once.
Yeah, I've never been.
All of us have been
No,
there.
I've actually never been, so I'm super excited about it. But my parents did honeymoon there, so there is a possibility.
Yeah, you should.
That I have been there. That, I could have been.
When you were a twinkle in someone's eye.
Just 4 cells big.
Probably.
Maybe I was there back then, but we never know. But I
was
hear that,
interesting.
I hear it's called, what, east to west?
Guilin is the best.
Guilin is the best.
East or west, Guilin is the best.
So
And
it's
Guilin
gotta be
used to be the
good.
capital of Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region, and it will move to Nanning, the
really?
capital city right now. So back in the 1950s, actually. But before that, it was the capital.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
And you had an interesting story
Yeah,
about
right,
your...
right. Yeah.
Was that your first time or no?
No. This will be my second time. The very first time was about 20 years ago.
Yes, that's
when
that
I
was the
was
first time.
covering
Yeah.
as a journalist, covering the then American President Clinton's visit
Bill
to
Clinton.
Guilin. Yeah, it was a very unique and special arrangement. For I think he must have heard about the writer saying something about Guilin, the beautiful things about Guilin. So that's great. Yeah. And also along the way, we've seen there's not much the agriculture. It's more like a tourism-oriented development in Guilin and the surrounding areas. Back in Nanning, we heard people in Nanning says that everywhere in Guangxi is Guilin, meaning that they are really proud of their own landscapes and the sceneries. So let's explore, what Guilin people are proud of them. Because I also heard that Yangshuo people, the suburb areas of Guilin, saying that
They're better.
Yeah, they are better.
Yeah, east or
First
west,
half.
east or west,
So we'll
Guilin is the best, but
Well, there is
Yangshuo
that
is the
friendly-
best in Guilin.
There's that friendly rivalry
And we're going
between
there.
Guilin and Yangshuo.
That's
Yeah,
right.
We're going to both places. I
But
think,
the main
right?
area
So
is usually in Yangshuo, right? Including the 20 kwai banknotes that we have been talking about
But
over
before
there.
that, I think we have a package to run, right? What is
Yeah,
it
that's
called?
right. So we're gonna have a package of one that is embedded in this special series. It is China Panorama. So because we have been talking about the beautiful landscape of Guilin, so why don't we just have a look?
Yeah.
And our reporter Zhu Longzhou had a story a couple of days ago. Now let's run it and take a look.
Let's have a look first.
Bamboo rafts, verdant fields, and lifelike mountains emerge from the water, glittering in the sunshine. It resembles yet another movie presenting the classic and mysterious landscape of China. But these are the wonders of the southern Chinese city of Guilin. Whenever Guilin is mentioned, one will hear the expression, by water, by mountains, loveliest Guilin. In the Chinese language, Guilin means forest of sweet osmanthus, presenting the fragrance of the region's flowers and a landscape of natural beauty. Guilin lies on the west bank of the Lijiang River and has long been renowned for its karst topography. The mountains come in various shapes and sizes. The river winds its way through the valleys, the natural caves are carved out by nature, and the region's rocks have been eroded by wind and water. This has ultimately garnered Guilin the name Four Wonders. Guizhou CGTN.
Welcome back. So definitely very amazing, right? Fantastic,
yeah.
beautiful scenery of Guilin, and we are on our way there. Of course, when it
seeing
comes to the
live.
beautiful scenery,
Yeah.
Lijiang River is definitely is must see, right? And we've all been there. Lijiang
All
River.
heard of it, yeah.
I would have to say that's just the mother river of that place, right?
Yeah,
and people live on it, especially when it comes to ecotourism. And then, so there were so many different projects going on along the Lijiang River. And of course, why it is so important, because I've been talking about that. That is on the back of the 20 kwai banknote. I hope that our viewers can have a close look. If we're zooming a little bit, we can have a look at the 20 kwai banknote. I'm afraid that it is still outside the code, right? But it's still very beautiful. It's
There's
really
some-
beautiful.
is there
Yeah.
some water
Yeah,
we
probably
see?
before the banknotes, and we can still have a look around
Yeah.
what is going on here. It's so lush and green. So many trees actually here. And I've noticed that one species of trees here, very special, very tall, pencil-like, and they have this little canopy. What tree that is?
Do you happen to know the name of the tree? This kind
Not
of special?
really.
Oh, okay.
Just some kind of trees
Yeah,
here.
different-
Probably kind of, what do we call it?
I think they have a most variety of the Chinese plants
That's
here
right.
in this area.
Because the climate,
The
not
climate
my-
is subtropical,
subtropical,
so
but
you
it's
have
very
different
great
kinds
for
of
plants
fruit.
and
Yeah.
yeah. Lots
Okay,
of
so now we
flowers.
can still see our bus driving by, and the beautiful scenery outside once again. The hills and mountains, but we're waiting for the karst formation that we have been talking
We'll be
about
there
just
soon.
now. We'll be
Probably
there
an
soon.
hour-ish.
Yeah, now we have been driving for about 4 hours, right? So
Yeah.
probably in an hour or two we'll be there, and then as we're drawing near, I think you're gonna see some of the karst formations.
So
over
you
there.
are watching our new China coverage. We're on day 2 of the 12-day trip. You can watch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Chinese Weibo, and follow us as well on our CGTN account.
Yeah, that's right. You can find us almost anywhere. CGTN, Apple, Weibo, or Facebook, especially. What time is it now? What time is it now over there? It's around 11, right? So in America, probably they'll be around there at night. So if you want to enjoy some beautiful scenery, leave your comments, and we'll get back to
We might
comments
read some
as
of
soon
them
as possible.
later.
Yeah.
Later this afternoon. So if you leave your comments, they can be also broadcasted. And we'll bring you 2 live shows on our social media platforms every day, about an hour and a half each, and 3 also TV shows, TV coverage.
That's right. So 100 million people actually in 2000, in the past year, in 2018, visited this place, and the ecotourism has been promoted in the city. So how about ecotourism is only here, or it is all around China? But this is the pilot phase, right?
It is. And how do we balance? Because this is so beautiful. We don't want to we don't want overdevelopment or people pouring in to destroy this. So how can we strike a balance between development and
I think that's one of the big challenges of tourism anywhere in the world, whether we're talking about beaches in the Philippines or Angkor Wat, that because so many people want to go, that overdevelopment is always a risk, and also the damage to the environment, to the scenic spot itself is a challenge. And I know that there are different ways to address this. Of course, you can just restrict development, restrict the number of people that come, maybe use more market-based approaches. So each have their pros and cons, but I think that Guilin, just being as famous as it is and being such an iconic representation of China, that this is an issue that is getting a lot of attention.
Yes. Speaking of this ecotourism, I'm really curious to find out what Guilin people is doing for the past 20 years. Because 20 years ago we were just flew in from Beijing to Guilin, so there was no chance to look at the beautiful sceneries along in Guangxi area, along the road from Nanning to Guilin. So at that time Guilin was beautiful, and Guilin was among the very first cities even in the world to be named as the World Natural Resources Heritage, one of the places back in 1980. Back in 1980s.
Exactly.
That was so. Since then, I heard that from the central government all the way down to the local governments, they have put this ecotourism mentality, the awareness, as well as the execution, the practices, in their mind and into their actions.
That's the top priority.
So Guilin people, when the people in other Chinese cities, including Hong Kong, Beijing, Shanghai, when people are proud of this reforming and opening up results, achievements by having how many skyscrapers in the city, Guilin people is proud of their natural skyscrapers of the mountains.
We don't see
mountains
skyscrapers
very
there.
unique.
Yeah.
At that time, I heard that Guilin has a height limit of the buildings they are constructing. But then later with the development, economic development, so I'm really curious to find out how they balance the ecotourism, because tourism is definitely the pillar of the local economic development, one of the pillars actually.
And there's another side to this too, because we're focused, on the consumer side, meaning what consumers see, height limitations, things like this. But there's also important behind-the-scenes factors to consider, because when you have more people come, there's more usage of water, there's more pollution. And one area I know that the government is working on too is this conservation. So, even some little things like, how often do you replace the sheets, the towels, do you put water-conserving faucets in, these kinds of things. And it's not just unique to Guilin, but I think all around the world.
Mentality.
But you really have to look at it from both sides. I think from the consumer side and from the operator side as well.
And hospitality, the industry of hospitality should be really developed in Guilin. There were so many tourists every year, right? 8 million.
Well, some of the first foreign hotels I think opened in Guilin, so back in the 80s.
Back in the 1980s.
1980s and all the way.
We're totally ahead of the time, right?
I think there is one more dimension in addition to the consumer side and operator side. There is the people living in Guilin, the native people, as well as people immigrating to Guilin. How do they think of that, and how do they preserve the natural beauty?
And we'll find out.
And not just that, but also the way of life as well. Because I think, of course, many of the ethnic minorities that live in places like Guangxi and Yunnan, have centuries of tradition. And when you bring in a lot of outside development, that can also be very disruptive and affect a lot of cultural norms and traditions. So I think that's another factor.
Yeah, that's
How
very
to
interesting.
preserve that and how
Yeah.
to keep the authenticity of this place is
Exactly.
just as important as
the way
its
it is,
economic
right?
development.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's all for us.
That's
now,
all the time we
before
have.
leave.
Yes.
Okay, so we're back in the coach once again. So
Yeah.
a little preview for what's going on at night. So we'll
Yes.
be there.
We'll be there in about an hour.
Yeah, an hour.
And we'll be
give
on
you-
Lijiang on a boat.
On a boat. We'll be boating there.
Yeah,
and
we'll
you
be
can
boating
see-
there, so stay tuned. We'll
Stay
be back.
tuned, and we'll be
Yes.
back
At
pretty
noon?
soon. At
And also-
night, actually. At
yeah,
noon and at
noon
night.
and then in the afternoon as well. So
Okay.
stay tuned, and
Stay
we'll be
tuned.
on social media as well as our TV program.
Okay, so back to you, Jeff and Will. Bye bye.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Southwest as we continue our new China adventure. You know, we have 3 crews going across the country, northeast, southeast, but we like to think this one's the best.
This one is absolutely the best.
You know, people know a lot about Shanghai. They know a lot about the old industrial area, but we're waking the whole world up to an area, excuse me, that perhaps they haven't heard a whole lot about. I'm joined by my co-anchor, Tao Yuan, and we have a couple of wonderful guests, Victor Gao, excuse me, and Chen Jiaha as well.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's early in the morning. But there we go. And there we see everybody on our bus right now. It takes a village to get this thing up and running every day, every few minutes. And it has just been an amazing experience so far. And we're only early on day 2. There you see some of the rugged landscape here in Guizhou Province that we have been traveling through for the past few days. And tell you what, for me, coming here for the first time, it's just been breathtaking. And we were talking to Victor Gao earlier, and one thing you explained to me, Victor, is how the infrastructure has really opened this area up and breathed economic life into it. And China could not build roads or bridges or railways the standard way, because they would go down the valley, then up the mountain, down the valley. So they went from the mountaintops, crossing them. So we have some of the highest bridges in the world here in this province, and now 9 high-speed rail lines that are bringing people from really all over China. What is that going to mean to this province, which has lagged behind the rest of China in terms of economic activity?
Traditionally, for thousands of years, Guizhou Province was known as a very isolated area, mainly because of difficulty of transportation coming into the province or getting out of the province. Much of the difficulties were caused by the difficult terrains, mountains and the canyons, for example. Now, I think just over the past 10 years or so, China has accumulated such an astounding amount of skills and engineering accomplishments to build highways, railways, tunnels, elevated highways, for example, which can overcome all the geographical difficulties of this province. As a result, this province all of a sudden has been transformed into a hub of transportation, becoming a hub east-west, for example, north-south, and now Guiyang, for example, is well plugged in through high-speed railway with almost all the major cities nearby. It can go all the way to Guangzhou, to Shanghai, or to Beijing, and to Yunnan's Kunming city in the west. So I think this will generate and emancipate a lot of productivity going forward for this province.
Right. So, Sean, you talked about how this place is little known to the outside world, outside China, obviously.
Absolutely.
But I think Guizhou is actually a very underrated province. Here are a list of some of the amazing things it's got to offer. A brief list, actually. It's actually home to China's national liquor, the Maotai. You've got something to say about that later.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you about that. It's
Sure.
home to the world's biggest single-dish radio telescope, and that they were able to build that here because of the karst landscape that you talked about. And by the way, the karst landscape here is also UNESCO listed. They've got some of the world's most amazing caves. What else? They have the world's highest bridge, like the highest bridge, over 500 meters high.
Waterfalls?
Waterfalls, amazing waterfalls. One of the most beautiful ones in the world, the Huangguoshu waterfall.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the national liquor, Maotai, the
yes, we're here to confirm what you may suspect. We're having some technical difficulties, but we're going to get this hammered out. And again, it's just, it's worth the wait. So if we do lose our signal every now and then, please stick with us on the web. And we'd like to hear where you're watching this from, too. So if you're watching, please send a message
comment
to CGTN. Yeah, we'll try to answer some comments, too, later on down the road. So we promised in the last time that we would try to talk more about the children left behind.
Right.
But we'll save that for a little bit
We
later.
have 4 more shows today. We got enough time to cover those grounds.
Absolutely.
And we're also going to play with the robot later in our later show, right?
That's one of the high-tech entities that has come to this area. It's a really good way to show you exactly what's going on here and why Guizhou is being lifted out of poverty and really is the economic linchpin of this whole province. Because if you don't have this, everything else is just kind of atmosphere.
Yeah.
You need to have the hub coming through, the major traffic coming through. We have these cloudy skies, but we're going to keep our nice warm smiles going for you all day long. Any final thoughts?
I'm just looking forward to going to these big data centers and tech centers to see what's really going on, because I came to Guizhou once 3 years ago for the first opening of China's Big Data Expo.
Wow.
Premier Li Keqiang was there. So after 3 years, I'm just keen on checking out how it's really doing here.
Yeah, new world, new China, and we continue to roll on. I think we're going to throw now to our friends in the southeast. So, guys, Jinhua and Michelle, please take it away.